Bowen Yang just completed his second season as a featured player on Saturday Night Live. I'm Kevin Jacobsen of Gold Derby here with Bowen.
Hi.
And this being your second season as part of the cast, did you find it easier, more difficult compared to the first?
I feel like I can't have a fair comp
Hmm.
because of the COVID of it all, I think. I mean, but in some sense, I think, gosh, I remember the first day we all came back, the cast came back for a meeting with Lauren, for him to go over the protocols with us and what would be different about the season. And I walked in, and then Chloe walked in, and then Keenan was already there, and Keenan had seen Chloe walk in and said, wow, it's that second season glow, that second season vibe. And we're like, what are you talking about? He was just like, he was like, whenever someone comes in for their, I mean, he's seen this happen a dozen different times, right? Like, he was just like, you just kind of can tell when someone is like comfortable finally. And and so I think in some ways the comfort was there, but yeah, and I definitely knew like who to go to in terms of collaborating or how to sort of execute on things. So I'm sure it was easier. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you did quite a bit this season, I must say, between your weekend update moments and getting to interact with so many different hosts. And you're someone who's pretty engaged with pop culture, I would say. So it must be a
Yeah.
particular kind of thrill to meet some of these people. Did you have one of those like I can't believe my life moments this season that you're still kind of amazed actually happened?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Several.
Mm.
One in particular was Kristin coming, um, and just checking my own expectations because I hadn't met her and I had not met her, and I was just kind of like really envisioning the most florid, fantastical scenarios in which I would find myself with her. And and somehow she exceeded all of those. I mean, I was just meeting her was just so wonderful and warm and inviting. And then after the show, she'd reached out and just said really nice things. And then the main thing that she said was just to cherish it because it cherish the job because she said, and I quote, it's the funnest job in the world. If you make it fun, if you have fun. And then she said, even in the hard times, it is still the funnest job in the world. And to hear her say that was just especially meaningful, just given her time at the show and um, what her career has become. Like, for her to still consider that the funnest job is huge. And so that was a pinch me for sure. Yeah.
Mm. And you get to have like the interaction like you have on that episode with her and Dua Lipa, and you're just in the
Yeah,
middle, and
yeah.
it's wild.
Wild, it's wild, yeah.
Yes. But obviously, with a show like SNL, you're getting to do a variety of different things: impressions, original characters, parodies. Do you have a preference as far as playing an original character from the ground up versus doing an impression of someone like a Fran Lebowitz, for example?
Well, it's interesting because I came in and I probably burned myself, scorched the tip of my finger as soon as I started out by doing the earliest things that I did on the show were Kim Jong Un and Andrew Yang, and those are both very loaded impressions. And immediately, I mean, God bless Chloe Feynman because it was our first week, it was our first show, and there was a Democratic primary sketch where she was Marianne Williamson, I was Andrew Yang, and she just sat down with me and helped me drill as much of Andrew as possible. We were just watching videos of him, and she just is a true master of this. Was really just immediately picked up on like the nuances and kind of helping me drill those down. And I still kind of just like balked when I got on stage and couldn't really do it. Um, so I kind of took a hard turn away from that for a while. But then this season, I kind of started to fold that in a little bit. And Fran was definitely a fun moment. Um, Elton John was a really fun gift from Dan Bulla and Stephen Castillo and Dan Licata, and Pete Davidson, who wrote the Stew sketch. Um, I was just, it kind of broke the seal on what impressions can be for me, which is not strictly these like people who evoke a lot of emotion from people from the audience. So yeah, I'm kind of horseshoeing back to maybe doing them in a more with a better approach for my own style. I don't know.
Well, this was such an interesting season because of the restrictions of COVID and everything, and but also because it was an election year, and I'm sure those first 6 episodes were wild to film in particular.
Mhm.
Also because you had a very limited audience, and then the election happens, that changes things for the rest of the season. Biden's
Right.
elected, then eventually with the finale, you have a fully vaxxed audience, packed house. I mean, that's quite a journey. Can you
Yeah.
talk about how you felt at the beginning of the season versus the end?
Um, it's such a crazy, it's such a wild chasm that we like vaulted over, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, those first episodes were so there was a sense of danger to them and I mean the protocols kept us completely safe clearly throughout the season. So none of it was a failure in terms of safety, but in terms of the feeling um, of doing those shows, especially those first 6 leading up to the election, there was just, I mean, every nerve was sort of prodded at in some way, on a performance level, on a political level, on a hazard level. You know, it's like it was just a lot, and I still think that most people who work at the show are in this latent period of processing that, and I think we will all come to some clear focus on what the hell even happened in those first 6 in this first 6 shows by like by Christmas this year. I'm sure we'll like one of us will be like, oh, okay, that's what that was. But then by the end, by the finale, um, I think a couple of my colleagues have remarked on this with people, but it was very emotional to just walk out, the entire cast walk out for the cold open, um, and to just have this sustained cheer, and for us to really feel just have this spatial awareness of it was a full house, and that had not happened for 8 months, or even like if you want to go all the way back to March of 2020, like it had not happened for 15 months or 14 months. So that was incredibly cathartic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to drill down specifically into a few moments you had this season.
Okay.
I'm sure everyone's already asked you about it, but you had a moment this season, and it was something so specific that I still don't know exactly how you got on the air. But of course, it is the iceberg that sunk the Titanic,
Mm.
or maybe he thinks of it differently, um, and is also there to promote his new album.
Yes.
And you talked about it already on Jimmy Fallon's show where it all originated. So I don't want to be too redundant, but
No, no.
I'm curious about a few things.
Yes.
One, just how you landed on what an iceberg would sound like,
Oh,
the
sure.
voice you use, what the mannerisms would be. Let's just start there.
That's actually a really interesting and specific question, Kevin, because I would say that the everything lined up by the time it got to air, because up until that point it was it was just a mess. It was so typically just for context, most update pieces run 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. The page count in terms of the formatting, the spacing on SNL scripts is 7 pages. That's the average. That's where you want to be. Anna Dresden and I cranked out a 10 pager. And then if you and I believe it clocks in, the whole piece clocks in at like 4 minutes and 45 seconds or something. Just like it was just over long from the beginning. And we were like, we are begging for this to get cut. We are begging for this piece to get cut after dress. And even at dress, I had not zeroed in. I had not I hadn't found literally like the timbre of his voice, and it really took a lot of just crazed experimentation in between dress and air for me to be like, okay, he has to like just like whine like this, like just we really had to lock in on that, and and Anna was being so respectful of my process by not like giving me literal line reads, um, but she was the perfect partner to have throughout it, because she is someone who everyone just trusts implicitly with making sure it works out, and thankfully it did. But then even now, what she said recently to me, which I think is really funny and perfect, is she said, the only reason we were begging for it to get cut, and the only reason they didn't cut it was because they didn't cut it. Like, it's just, I mean, I don't know if that even makes sense, but it's like, there were so many reasons for it to not work, and there's just so much going on there that, like, God bless Lorne Michaels for giving it a chance, because I still, yeah, I personally am still incredulous at the idea that it made it on.
Yeah. Also, what exactly was your reaction when you saw the beautiful headpiece
Oh
that
my
you would be
God.
wearing?
I my dresser, Chris Leary, wonderful. He also works in the shop. Was telling me throughout the day. Okay, so Kate, in the shop, is working on your headpiece. I was like, great. We were just expecting like just a little tent of something about this big. We would have been thrilled with that. And then, uh, and then he tells me later on in the day, oh, she's taking like an electric carving knife and just sculpting these gorgeous like grooves into this piece. And I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting. Like, I can't really envision that, but great. And then finally at like 6:30 p.m., so dress is at 8, 6:30 p.m., I get called to the shop just to like have for a size test, for a fitting test on my head. And really, that kind of made me, for the first time, genuinely excited to do this, because like I said, all the way up to air, I was just like, this, I'm going to embarrass myself in such a gigantic way in front of an audience, in front of Lauren, in front of the producers, in front of the writers and the cast. I was like, I was just nervous the whole time. And so, but then when the headpiece went on, I was like, this is going to be fun. That's when I had the idea maybe that it could be something that could just be, I don't know, just a big swing, but just to enjoy it. I had not enjoyed it up until the headpiece was worn.
Wow,
Yeah.
it's interesting. Um, well, you also perform the smash single Lover Boy, which is a
Yes.
bop.
Thank
Can we
you.
expect any more singles?
Colin texted me the next day saying, I mean, we got to hear more from the album. And I
Yeah,
said, I think 8 of the 12 tracks are spoken word interludes, a la Janet Jackson.
of course.
But I mean, I think this might be a fun summer project, is to
Hmm.
really flesh out what that album is. It is sort of an amalgam of so many different genres, so that will be sort of the thing that gets in my way, maybe. But I might try and do it.
Yeah. Well, on a more serious note, another moment that really made headlines this season was another Weekend Update segment where you were addressing the rise in anti-Asian crimes, and you weren't playing a character, and you were really able to, I think, toe the line between delivering this very crucial message, but still, sprinkling in your comedic voice with these very specific references. Did you find that to be kind of a tricky balance when you were writing it to figure out exactly how to deliver that message?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that was the most challenging week. On just and taken as a whole, like holistically, that week was very um, difficult, just because we had just come off a break, and so you're kind of dusting off the cobwebs a little, the thin little things that have sort of that have made you just that you're just getting back into things after a 3 week break, and the Atlanta shootings had happened the week before, and Celestium, our new writer this season, had called me up after the topical meeting on Monday, and they said, "What do you think of what are you thinking of doing this?" Because like, I'm not sure. Um, I'm not sure. It took some triangulation in terms of landing where we wanted to land, because at first we kind of went the other way, and we're just like, let's just is there a world in which we don't talk about this at all, in which we don't address what just happened? And Celeste and I sort of went down that route, entertained that idea for maybe a few hours, and just pitched some ideas that never really percolated. And then throughout the day, that Monday into Tuesday, I'd gotten some temperature check texts from producers and writers about potentially doing an update piece as myself. And I really kind of balked at the idea at first. But then slowly, Celeste, throughout the course of these 2 days, Celeste had said, if we don't write about this and talk about this, then who will on the show? And that was when it kind of we weren't duty bound to do it, but it just felt like we might as well try and figure this out. And it was the only thing I worked on that week, and on writing night on Tuesday, because it just sort of took up emotional bandwidth, which I know sounds so, soft and whatever, but it's very difficult. It was very difficult, and passed around drafts between Sudie Green, another co-writer on it, and Celeste, and it was, I knew that it wasn't going to be like the most belly laughy thing that I would have worked on, but Celeste's mandate to me was, it was this first year writer telling me what to do, which I find so beautiful, because they so quickly figured out what to do at the show. And so everyone's just in love with Celestia, by the way. But anyway, they had said, just your only job is to not lie, is to tell the truth. And I was like, great. And then that was kind of it. And then, the show has a tradition of addressing any tragic thing that happens in the country. This felt like the spate, like the spate of the attack sort of made it enough of a news story that like it just like was bleak, and that people sort of were helpless around talking about it or doing something about it, that we wrote that. And yeah, it just we had to honor the tradition of the show in terms of like, post 9/11, these are not good comparisons, these are all over the place, but like Louisiana abortion bans, you had Leslie Jones come on and talk about that as herself. After some pay disparities, after Me Too broke out, you had some cast members come on as themselves to talk about that as well. And so, again, these are terrible comparisons, but it felt like the thing to do, to just come on Weekend Update and then end it on a strident note, the way that those other pieces had sort of become sort of rallying cries by the end. So that was sort of what we modeled those after. And that was it. That was such a long-winded answer, Kevin. I'm sorry.
That's great. And I think it certainly prompted a big emotional response from the audience too. And well, we only have a minute or two left here, but we assume you'll be back next season, hopefully promoted to the main cast. Do you know anything for next season yet?
About my place in the
montage, about
and
anything?
No, nothing. And we've all, this is where everyone sort of retreats into their own little silos, and people just are sort of unlearning are just sort of undoing all of the like close interactions that we've had all season. And so I don't know anything, but would be so thrilled to come back. Would be so thrilled to, try. I just saw today Fran Lebowitz do an interview where she has gone from saying that she has not seen my impression to saying that she does not like it. So we have confirmation that she's seen it. Perfect. And so I am not as a way of making her feel harassed or annoyed, but I really do. I'm suddenly motivated to try and bring her back in some way. That's the only thing that I know about myself for the season, is that I will try and sneak one in. And if not, then no worries, but that's all I know.
I love that. All right. Well, for those of you watching, subscribe for more interviews and head to goldderby.com and make your Emmy predictions. Bowen, it was great to talk to you today.
Thanks, Kevin. You too.